Hi guys, so today we're checking out the S&B cold air intake with the oil cleanable cotton filter fitting all 2018 and newer 2.0 liter JL Wranglers. So if you are in search of some better performance to help your engine breathe better and an overall cool look to your engine bay, this option by S&B is going to be a great choice to take a look into. Now, cold air intake in this one specifically is going to help you out when it comes to performance gains, horsepower, and torque. Especially when it is in that throttle response, you're definitely going to notice it out of this S&B cold air intake. Now this will also help out with your MPG, considering that this is going to help out your efficiency as well with the overall design. Now speaking of that design, this is going to come with a large oiled filter, which will be great for anybody out there who is a fan of an oiled filter for the maintenance and the ease and the lifespan of that filter. Now it is going to optimize filtration with its setup, and I'll tell you guys a little bit more about the details in just a minute. But paired with the intake tube that's going to eliminate all the restriction and streamline that airflow, this is going to give you some really good performance for your JL and help it breathe a lot better. Not to mention, this will also help out with that turbo noise or the little whistle. If you like to hear the turbo spool, this one is definitely going to help out. Now, what I really like about this choice is the fact that this is going to have a closed box setup as far as the air box is concerned. Now, this will be great for anybody who lives in a wetter climate and is in search of a little bit more protection than some other options have to offer when it comes to that filter. Now, what I also really like about this choice is the fact that this is going to have a nice little window here. Not only are you getting the styling of the red filter with the cold air intake, but you're also getting an eye on the filter for easy maintenance in the future. Really, all you have to do as far as maintenance is pop off this window, and you can easily pop out the filter, clean it, oil it, and pop it back into place. Now, with all of that being said, this is going to come in at roughly $350, and I personally think that that price is well justified. You can really see the detail of the design down to even the hardware that is included in the kit. This is a very inclusive kit, and it really comes with everything that you need, and this is going to have an overall efficient design when it comes to getting all of that cold air to your turbo and keeping all of that hot engine bay air out. Now, in comparison to some other options available on the page, again, this is going to have that closed air box design. Some other options may come with a plastic heat shield or even an aluminum heat shield. However, I personally think that this is going to give you a little bit more as far as eliminating all heat soak or any hot engine bay air getting to that filter, and of course that protection. Some of the less expensive choices will usually just come with that heat shield or have a more bare bones design, as where this is going to have a little bit more while still getting a lot of cold air to your turbo. Not to mention, some of their choices may not come with all of the bells and whistles down to this window, the hardware, or even a very large intake tube like you see here. Now again, I also like the fact that that is going to be made out of a plastic material, considering that that's not going to have any or at all heat soak inside that intake tube. Some other less expensive options are usually going to have an aluminum tube or a stainless tube that can take a little bit of heat and warm up that air. However, this option is not going to do that. So overall, I personally think that this is a high quality option. Again, very inclusive, and it's going to add a lot of performance to your JL if that is what you're looking for. Now, as far as installation is concerned, I'm going to give this a very easy 1 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter, taking you no longer than an hour to get this thing installed. You're going to need some very basic hand tools to get the job done. So speaking of that install, let me walk you through that right now. The tools that I used for my install were an impact wrench, a trim removal tool, a soft pry tool, an 11/16 inch wrench, a 10mm ratcheting wrench, a 1/4 inch drive ratchet, a Phillips screwdriver, a 10 and 8mm socket, and a pair of side cutters. So our first step is popping the hood, and then we can disconnect some lines from our intake. So on the side of our airbox here, we're going to have 2 lines or 2 hoses. All we have to do is press on this gray tab and pull back. It may be a little bit difficult, especially if you have some mud in your engine bay, so just be mindful of that. So the bottom one has a little green tab that you need to press down. I'm just using a soft pry tool and press down on that. So this bottom one may be a little bit tricky. You just have to press down on it hard enough. I'm using a a soft pry tool in order to do this, but you just press down and pull back just like the top one. You can just move this out of the way. I just tuck it on the power steering tank right here. And then what we can do next is disconnect our sensor. So our IAT sensor is right here. All we have to do is press down and pull back. We'll swap this over in just a minute, so we're gonna keep this in the intake tube. And then what we can do at this point is just make sure that this wiring harness is out of the way. So I'm gonna take a clip removal tool and just pop that little Christmas tree clip out of the side of the intake tube. Next, we can remove the two 10mm bolts that are attaching the intake tube to the upper radiator support. So I'm going to take a 10mm socket and my impact wrench and remove those. Next, we can pop an 8mm socket onto our impact wrench, or if you're using a ratchet, and then we can loosen up the two clamps, one that's connecting to the piping that's going to our turbo, and then one over at the airbox. Just gonna loosen both of those up. Once those are loose, we can put this to the side and we can wiggle that intake tube right off. For this, if you need to use that soft pry tool just to get the tube off the airbox. Wiggle out our intake tube and put that to the side. What we can do next is remove our airbox, and this is going to be held in by a bolt up at the front, and then there's going to be a couple grommets. So I'm going to use a 10mm socket to remove this bolt, and then we can pull the airbox right out. All we have to do at this point is just give our airbox a good lift. And pop that out of place. So now that our intake tube and our airbox is out, we also need to remove our turbo resonator right here. Now this is gonna have a wiring harness with a bracket up top. I'm gonna remove the wiring harness from the side of the resonator. This little clip is attached to this bracket that we're gonna remove fully. So I'm just gonna take a pair of a trim removal tool or a clip removal tool, and we can just wiggle that out. Then we can take a 10mm socket and remove the two bolts up top. Bracket should pop right off. So now in order to get this turbo resonator off of here, we do have to remove this barbed clamp. Now this is a no tamper clamp, so we're not going to be able to use a socket to remove it. We do have to cut it, and you just cut it with the at the ear here with a pair of heavy duty snips. So I'm just going to take my snips. I'm going to go ahead and cut that off. Now once that's off of there, what we can do is just give this a good wiggle, and the resonator should pop right out of there. While we're still in the engine bay, we can remove this bolt that's connected to our fender here. Now this is going to be used as a mounting point for our new airbox, so I'm going to use a 10mm socket and just remove the bolt on the left. Let me go put that to the side. So before we go ahead and put this intake together, I did want to stop down and show you some of the similarities and differences, a little bit of a comparison between the new one and our factory one, show you why this option by S&B is going to be a big upgrade for your Turbo JL. Now, just as a brief overview of our factory system, you guys are probably pretty familiar with this system already, but this is going to come with an enclosed air box. Now that's going to be great for protection as far as the filter is concerned. And then we're also going to have a factory paper element filter. Now that is going to not be reusable. You will have to change it every so 1,000 miles or whenever you see fit. And it doesn't do the best job as far as performance. It does a pretty okay job when it comes to filtration, but nothing compared to this option by S&B. Now moving over to the intake tube from the factory, as you can see, it's a pretty standard setup. But it is going to have resonators over on the side, which can cause restriction and can dull down that performance out of the 2.0. So overall, this is great for stock applications, but when it comes to performance and optimizing filtration, this is where the S&B option is really going to step in and take charge. So starting off with the air box, this is going to be an enclosed air box, just like our factory one. This will give you a little bit of protection to that filter, which will be great if you take your Jeep off-road and want that extra protection to the filter. However, this is still going to pull in all of that cold air. And this is also going to be durable, made of a double linked plastic material. So not only will this hold up, but it's going to get rid or eliminate any and all heat soak inside the engine bay when it comes to protecting the filter from any hot air. So this is really going to make sure that all of that hot engine bay air stays away from the filter, making sure that you get all of that cold air in and to your turbo. Now, speaking of the filter, this is going to be an oiled filter. It is going to be a lot larger than our factory filter, which is going to pull in a lot more air. The oiled feature of this, or the oiled surface of the filter itself, is going to be a little bit sticky, and that's what's going to trap all of the dirt, dust, and micro elements from getting through the paper or the cotton filter itself. So overall, this is going to optimize the filtration, but it's also going to pull in a lot more air because of the size. Now, speaking of pulling in more air, this is going to do a really good job at that as far as directing that airflow right to the turbo. Now, the intake tube is also made of the durable cross-linked plastic, so it is going to, again, be durable and hold up just as long as our air box here. And it's also going to have a straight through and large design. So as you can see on our intake tube here, we're not going to have any resonators, which is going to eliminate all the restriction that our factory intake tube was giving us. Again, optimizing performance, optimizing airflow, and getting all of that cold air to the turbo faster and better. Now, what I do really like about this choice by S&B is the fact that, as you can see on the top here, there's no top to this. This is going to come with a clear plastic window. Now, the plastic is going to be incredibly durable, but it is going to be clear, so you can keep an eye on your filter. If you see dust or dirt or really anything starting to build up on your filter, you can easily just pop that out and clean it. So it makes it easy as far as keeping an eye on it for maintenance. And also you get the look of a cold air intake inside your engine bay. You get the look of the red filter right through the top window there. Now, as far as the rest of the kit, this is going to come with everything that you need in order to swap over all of the factory components that you need, like the IAT sensor and some fittings for the EVAP system. So overall, this is a very inclusive kit. It's going to optimize the performance, optimize filtration for your 2.0 a lot better than the factory one did. So what do you say we go ahead and put it together and get this installed on our Jeep? So what we can do first is remove our IAT sensor, or our intake air temperature sensor. And all we have to do is just give it a good twist. You have to make sure you get that little tab over the notch there. Just give it a good turn, and you can just wiggle it back. There's gonna be a little O-ring that keeps it in there, so nice little wiggle. We can put our intake tube from the factory to the side and use our new intake tube. We can grab the grommet, line up the little tab on the back, and just press that into place. And it should sit in there just like that. And what's nice about this is that it's just not like a universal grommet. This will have an arrow and a little tab, so the IAT sensor will be facing the correct way once you put it in. So
Making sure that the tab is closest to the ridge here. Just gonna press that down on in. Now once the tab on the IAT sensor is flush, we can give it a good turn, make sure that it sits over the little slope here, and then we'll be all good to go with that. Now the next thing that we're gonna do is add the fittings for the evap system on the back here. So there is going to be a little fitting that we can thread into place. Now this is gonna go on to where it's hand tight. And then we can give it one rotation with an 11/16 inch wrench. You could also use an adjustable wrench for this as well. Just be careful because it is plastic. You want to make sure that the end of this fitting is facing the back portion of the intake tube, and then it's off center a little bit. Next, we can attach the fitting for our evap. This is where those two evap hoses that we took off of our factory intake tube are going to connect to, and this fitting is going to wrap around and circulate through the bottom of here as well. So there is a little clamp, just going to pop that onto the middle. It's going to snap on. We want to make sure that the fitting that's going to come around and attach to this one is facing the inside of the intake tube. And we can line this up. Grab our provided Phillips head screw. And a Phillips head screwdriver, you can thread that into place. Once that's threaded on, we can take our provided hose, pop that on to either side of the fitting. This is just going to wrap around just like this and circulate through the bottom. Just be careful because these are plastic. You can adjust it however much you need. Give it a good tighten. And now our intake tube is pretty much set up, so we can move on to assembling the airbox. So we're gonna have two couplers, one that needs to go on the back and then one for the air duct at the front that needs to go on the front. And you can just line them up with how they're oriented. So this is going to have a little point down at the bottom, and we can just fit that into the airbox. Right. I want to make sure that it's around on the edges. We can do the same thing for the back. All right. Now while we're here, we can add the seal to the top of the airbox. We're not going to install this cover just yet. We need to get the airbox and the intake tube installed and then put in the filter, and then we can pop our cover or our window right on top. But this little seal is just gonna pop into the top, make sure that no particles, dust, dirt, mud, water, really anything can get inside of here. Really good design by SMB with this. All right, making sure that's sitting pretty flush. It's supposed to kind of sit up a little bit and we can squish it down with the window. But at this point, we can head over to the Jeep and start assembling our intake. Now, like I showed you guys before, we took off that bolt inside the engine bay on the fender. This bracket is gonna connect to the side of the airbox and the place where we took out that factory bolt. So I'm gonna take the provided hardware and we can thread this into the side of the intake. I'm using a 10mm socket. Right. Make sure that it's snug. And now we can head over to the Jeep. Now at the bottom where the intake box is supposed to be secured, there's 2 grommets. There's also 2 posts on the bottom of our air box here. So what we're gonna do is line those up the best we can, give it a good push down, and the air box will be secure at the bottom. Right. So this bracket here is making contact with this second bolt. What we can do is just remove that second bolt with a 10mm socket. So I'm actually just gonna pop the intake box right out. We can pop this bolt out and we can line it up. All right, so now it is a little bit closer. What we can do is take our provided hardware, line up that bracket there, and either using a 10mm ratcheting wrench or a 10mm socket, we can thread that in and snug that up. All right, so I just used a 10mm socket to get it started. There's not a lot of room here. I'm just gonna use a 10mm ratcheting wrench and tighten that up. Now we can also just make sure that the other side of the bracket is snug. Again, we can use that 10mm socket or that 10mm ratcheting wrench. Don't want to over tighten this one because it is a fitting that's inside that plastic there. But once our air box is installed, we can move on to the intake tube. So what we can do now is put our provided clamp onto the coupler that was holding on our turbo resonator. And this is just going to sit down where that barbed clamp was to begin with. Then we can wiggle our intake tube down on in. Moving it into the air box. Once it is in the air box, we can get it into the turbo coupling over here, making sure that it sits over that lip. I want to make sure that all sides are sitting over the first lip and butting up against the second one. Right. Same with the airbox side. And then what we can do from here to make sure that the intake tube is not going to go anywhere, we can tighten up the provided clamp that we just installed with an 8mm socket. So what we can do next is reattach this bracket to the top. There's going to be 2 mounting points for our factory hardware. And then we can reinstall our IAT sensor plug. So I'm just going to pop that one in real quick. So once you hear a click, we can move on to the bracket. I'm just going to use the provided hardware. So once you hear the IAT sensor click, we can move on to installing this bracket. We're going to use the factory hardware. Just going to thread that right in to captured nuts there. that are installed already on our intake. We can take a 10mm socket and tighten those up. If you need to tighten that back one up a little more and that clip is giving you some trouble, you can use a 10mm ratcheting wrench. But once that bracket is installed, we can move to our filter. We have to move the intake tube back a little bit just to get it to line up. And we can pop the filter in. Make sure that it's over that lip on the intake tube. And once it's sitting there, so once it's in a good spot, we can take an 8mm socket and tighten that up, tighten up the clamp. Give it a good tug just to make sure that everything's all good. Then we can install our little window here. So this is gonna come with a cover. Keep that little window protected. Now once the plastics are off, what we can do is line this up to make sure that it fits. All right. And we can tighten that up. So these little covers are going to go on each corner as a little accent and also as just a plastic washer. And give that a good seal. I'm going to drop that down on in there. So you may have to work the screw through the plastic washer before it actually goes into the plastic, or through the plastic into the air box, should I say. So I'm not going to completely tighten everything up. We're going to get all 4 of these threaded in, and then we'll go back and tighten them up with the Phillips head screwdriver. All right, now once those are all threaded in, we can just go back, like I said, and just tighten those up. You want to make sure that this window is sealing to the seal underneath there. Now you don't want to over tighten it, but you do want to make sure that it's pretty snug. You can see the seal actually pressing up against the window there. So once that's on, our last step is just to plug in our evap hoses, which are just going to slide on to that fitting there. So you just have to press or like push these back, and they should kind of push themselves onto that fitting there. And then after everything is all secure, then you're all set to go. So that is going to wrap it up for my review and install. Make sure you like and subscribe for more videos and products just like this, and always keep it right here at extremeterrain.com.